All right, so we're doing Europe, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Can we just take a second to realize that in the last year, we have not really recorded. And we are recording 2 podcasts, well, 4 probably total, 3, 4 podcasts in the span of 1 week. I'm just saying, like,
you know,
we make progress.
I feel like we became gazelles or something suddenly, and we're just racing off this starting line.
Yeah, I think we should probably just double down on this and make this our full-time job. Yeah, we're pretty amazing.
So so podcasting, ironically enough, is one of the world's fastest growing industries,
dude.
Yeah,
ours isn't the world's fastest.
No, it's not. No, I mean, as in like market share, it's insane. Insane. Totally bonkers. So people making lots of money on this. I mean, not us. But anyway, I was just running into that the other day. I was like, wow, that's crazy. But
it's kind of wild.
Yeah, I'm not sure. We started this thing like 3 years ago, 2 years ago. It's been off and on.
It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a little while, just kind of off and on. But
yeah,
I think it's taking us interesting places, and every episode you never know what's going to hit you,
right?
So with so many different things, because so the title, Mind Castle, right, or having strong minds that are well used, and taking advantage of your brain. Take good care of it. So you never know what we're going to bring to the table, because it's like I learned something cool, like the other episode I was telling you about nuclear retaliation policy of the United States, right, which you didn't know about. It's really interesting stuff, right? Actually, I don't think you were interested at all, but I am. So
it was interesting. It's good party information.
I could tell you a lot more where that came from. But really, there's something with that, and I'd like to do an episode on this sometime. I did a newsletter, and I'm doing a couple more on it, on the concept of polymathy. So learning, a wide range of things, and how that's really good for you, and it fits perfectly with this podcast.
Yeah, it does.
This is kind of what we do here. So anyway, that was a nice little pre-ramble. So what are we talking about today, though? Because that's not the main topic. I do want to do one on polymathy. So everybody that doesn't know what it is, well, you're on the edge of your seats until we do it.
Whenever you pick the episodes, it always starts with me not knowing what the thing is.
Do you never heard of polymathy?
Nope.
Yeah, me neither, until like 2 weeks ago.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. Jumping into this episode, we're going to discuss and roll around the events of our Europe trip, I believe, and kind of lay out some of what that is, what we learned, some of the key, maybe some of the key points that were critical in that trip, because it was a hard trip, and there was some things that we learned about team management and team development and conflict resolution, all that stuff that I think could be really, really valuable to our audience, because it's things that I didn't know. You knew them more than I did, but I didn't really know. So I got to see it, in real time, and learn those lessons, which is really cool. But I think we should first kind of give a little breakdown of what the trip was. I mean, just the whole fact that we were able to go on that and do that, and the extent of it is just kind of wild. Like, I was thinking about it. I could live multiple lifetimes and probably never have that opportunity.
Yeah.
And it's just pretty wild. So maybe you probably break it down, because I was just along for the ride kind of. Yeah. So maybe you should break it down.
Yeah. So this, most people don't care very much about medieval history, but it's really important for the formation of the modern world. Mm-hmm. So there's this critical time slot in the early 1500s when we're going out of like medieval, dark age, that, into your more Enlightenment. We're getting rid of things like feudalism, like we talked about on another episode, where governments are changing, the way religion is done. All these shifts start happening in the early 1500s, and one of the big pieces with that, and there's more to it than this, but Martin Luther nails his 95 complaints, the theses, to the church door. Literally writes down, hey, not cool what the Catholic Church is doing. They're going to nail these to a door. And that causes a massive firestorm, which wasn't his intention, by the way. He's just a monk, and he's like, hey, here's some complaints I have. Like, I'm going to post them on the village bulletin board, essentially. That's what it was. Like, back in the day, you would like nail your announcements or whatever, because they didn't have Facebook, so you would nail that. That was like your Facebook wall back then. So he nails them, and it sparks a firestorm. And this is early 1500s. So this launches the Reformation, which is one of the main things that brings us into the modern era, so to speak. And it opens up a whole can of worms, a lot of things. So in that slice of time, you had, for hundreds and hundreds of years, the government and the church, which was the religion of the continent of Europe at the time, were joined together. They were same time. And now we're here in America and we're like, what? That's really dumb. Like we were like,
that's like what our nation was founded on.
Yeah. Like America is like, no, hello, like freedom. Like we do not do that here. We do not do state churches here, which ironically, America did initially have state churches when it was first started as a colony, and it quickly fell apart because all these freedom loving folk were like, no, we are not doing that. I want to be able to have whatever church I want. I want to be able to worship however I want. And that became, it's baked right in the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. Okay. But those ideas didn't come from nowhere. They came from somewhere. And the Reformation is a big part of that story. So the church and state all fused together. And it caused a lot of corruption and a lot of issues that were not good because, we all know government's pretty corrupt, right? Or can be. And so that was what Luther sparks. But there's a bunch of other things rolled into that, and this is more niche Anabaptist Reformation studies, but the Anabaptist movement comes out of that in Switzerland. Yeah. There's a Reformation that starts happening in Switzerland too, where they're like, church and state, this stuff's weird, we got to make some changes. And they made some changes, but they didn't go far enough, apparently, because there's a group of guys there in Zurich, young scholars, that were like, no, there's things that are not okay, and we need to push it a lot further of separating these two out, and freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. So I get to choose how I want to worship and what I want to believe. And this was not okay. Even with some of the changes that were happening, it was considered not okay. So they broke off from the official church, the official state church, and they were called the Anabaptists. And the reason for that was, at the time, everybody got baptized as an infant. Because that was the way the government kept track of you. Now we have Social Security numbers. A very secular, just a whatever thing. But at that time, how do you keep track of who's born where so that you can tax them?
Yeah.
Well, you require that they all have to be baptized within the first 8 days.
Smart.
It works great. So as soon as they were baptized, okay, now you're a citizen of whatever area, and now you're a member of that church wherever you're baptized, and now for the rest of your existence, you are now liable for tax and tithe, both to that church and to the local government, whatever government entity. And that's how it was for hundreds and hundreds of years. These guys are saying, nope, we ain't doing that. That is not right. If my kids want to believe this, they can choose to believe it, but it's not going to be a given. You have to choose to believe whatever religion you want to believe. And so their enemies called them the Anabaptists, which basically means rebaptized, because they said, we don't acknowledge that initial baptism. That's not fair. That's not okay. Children have no choice when they're 8 days old. We believe you should be able to choose what you end up believing.
Right.
And so they were immediately kicked out and heavily persecuted by the government for just like, you don't fit into society. Well, you're saying you're not going to baptize your infants? Well, then how are we going to tax them? Literally, like, this is considered a tax evasion. And I mean, this is very illegal.
Tax evasion.
Yeah. Like, this is not okay. And so it's a wild story. And those people, over time, turn into what are the Amish and Mennonites today, essentially. And they trace all the way back to those early 1500s. And what's really interesting is those initial ideas that they had about freedom of choice, freedom to believe how you want, and the push for church and state to be separate, they were hundreds of years ahead of their time. You read their stuff now, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Yep. State shouldn't be the same. I'm really glad, by the way, that like Congress isn't a church, right? I mean, like, can you imagine?
Man,
like
it would be really
weird, right? Yeah. And we take that for granted now.
Yeah.
But they started something that over hundreds of years turned into a lot of the, at the time, would have been considered, wow, like really progressive, ideals about how government and religion work.
Yeah.
And they were like 200 years ahead of their time. And then when America comes along, by that point, it had been going along long enough. They were like, well, yeah, definitely. Like, you should be able to choose how you, and a lot of other countries. And of course, now Europe is, you can believe whatever you want, Anyway, it's really interesting story.
Yeah.
That was a long pre-ramble about early modern, I guess you could say, early modern times, and how it applies to this day. It's an important story. And so what we wanted to do is, this year that we're recording this, is 500 years that event happened when these early Anabaptists made that choice. And so we were like, we should do a documentary series on this piece of history. And so that's what we did. We got some historians and we went over there and traveled all over Europe and made this documentary series. And it was wild because we can't find another series like this. Like you can find this material if you go by these kind of obscure books and, but it's not a very well-known story.
Yeah.
And so we were like, put it in video format and put it out on YouTube. So anyway, that's the background.
Yeah. So from there, we whipped together a team of 11 people, right? And traveled all across Europe for 3 weeks, 20 days, actually, technically, and recorded a whole bunch of stuff. Wow, what an experience. So I was a part of that. I was the director of photography or cinematography. And so there was 5 camera guys and 2 historians, so 3 on camera. And then we had a few other support people on staff and the director and stuff. So 11 total. But all that to say, you and I had our plates full with a lot of different things. Me with directing the shoot and setting up the camera angles and all of that. And you with the script and meshing together the script with the personal touches of the talent and the historians and stuff. And it's like that whole thing was really challenging, I'm sure. So we had some pretty wild stuff happen. And it's interesting because it fits really, really well with what I already do, like video editing wise and shooting wise and script and all that stuff. And so while we were filming it, it was really fun for me because I was able to step into that role of DP and it's like, this is what I do. Like I can see all of it and I can kind of tell people where to go and how to set up the shot. And so you and I worked with each other pretty closely during that time. So that was kind of our specific roles and the size of our team and how long we were there. We went to 6 countries. And wow, we covered a lot of miles driving. I was one of the drivers.
Yeah, it was fun. Several thousand miles.
Several thousand, yeah. And I was actually a part of a pre-trip. So myself and one of the other videographers and the director went over there for a 10-day trip to run through all the locations first and get a feel for how everything looked. And that was even probably almost more stressful than the actual AP trip that we took later because we were just hauling it. I mean, we were moving so fast, just rushing through these locations and walking everywhere and had no idea about some aspects of Europe that we had to learn and just fun things like that.
See, you hadn't spent a lot of time in Europe
up
to this point. You'd done a trip to Italy like years and years ago. But,
oh man, I was like for you. 18, I think, when that happened. Yeah. So it's quite a while ago.
Yeah.
7 years ago, give or take.
It's a different continent. That's for sure.
It's a totally different environment and place and stuff.
And it was so ironic just like from a sociological perspective where you have, 500 years ago, they would literally execute you if you didn't agree with some weird nuance of Christian theology or something. And the state, not the church, the government would come in and kill you or put you in prison. This is wrong. This is illegal. Their laws were literally founded on these weird nuances of Christian theology. And it's what? And now you go there and it's incredibly secular. It's incredibly totally secular. Different. And you're like, wow, this has changed a lot. You know? And in some ways, probably good. I mean, they're not, when they would execute people, they would literally burn them alive or
torture them.
Or
that's what surprised me the most, probably.
So I'm really glad they're not doing that anymore. But at the same time, just to see how crazy far secular it's gone, it is a bit of a shock. It's quite a bit more secular than here. When I say secular, I mean religion's not a part of life. Like we have here, which then again, we're recording this in Southern Tennessee, which is Bible Belt. So there's a lot of just religion in the air, in the environment, which, okay, people have different opinions on that. I mean, and stuff, but it's definitely a contrast. You go over there and it's wow, how much really has changed in 500 years.
Yeah. Well, so I was in Strasbourg there. We had a rest day there. And so I walked around in the evening and there was music, live festival stuff happening. And so I went around. And I ended up talking to this lady from Spain, and she's living in Strasbourg now.
That's France.
Strasbourg, France, yeah. Right there, that would be where Notre Dame is. If y'all are ever
not
in the
the
area.
one in Paris,
not the one in Paris.
Yeah,
there's
two. Yeah,
which
was so confusing.
It was. Yeah. Now I got to see the one in Paris. But anywho, I talked with her for a little while, and I forget the exact percentage she said that were Christian or professing Christianity. It was less than 10%, I think.
It's very low. Yeah.
It's very low. I was very, very, very surprised. And yeah, I was like, well, what do they believe? And she's like, nothing. Like it's just like, it's no religion essentially. And so that was really surprising for me, because you go around and all you like these massive churches and everything, like that was the center of Europe. That was the center of everything that happened.
Yeah.
And now you go, and it's in a way, it's kind of a ghost town in a way. Like you go there, and yet you know,
religiously speaking,
yeah. You go there and you know, like, this is like magnificent, but people don't care about it anymore. Yeah. Like it's very strange in a way.
History is an important thing, and that was one of the reasons we wanted to make this series. History tells us a lot about ourselves.
Yeah,
and it shows like the things that we face. They're not new. You know, you read some of this stuff from 500 years ago and the debates they're having and the challenges they're trying to figure this out of that. And it's like, feels really familiar, actually, some of it.
Yeah.
You know,
and we're still talking about some of that stuff.
Yeah. History kind of runs in cycles, you know. And there was another piece too. I don't agree with the historiography of Jordan Peterson, right? Mm-hmm. I think he's a abysmal historian. His field is psychology, but he did say something important. He said history is important because all of us are historical beings. Mm-hmm. I was like, that's a good point, because I'm in the spot that I am right now because of what happened in the past, built up to this place in time.
Right.
For example, our ancestors would have been some of those early Mennonites in southern Germany who were experiencing that horrendous persecution of like, oh, you're not part of the state church? Okay, you know, we will exile you. That was a really common thing. Which is okay, well, you don't want to be part of the state church and, you know, be in our system of how we do things. Okay, that's fine, but you have to leave, and then the state is going to seize everything you own.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay. Like, can you imagine that happening now? I mean, there would be riots in the streets, you know, now. I mean, we would absolutely just go ballistic over that. But at the time, that wasn't unusual. And so he was facing things like that, and he stows away on a ship and, you know, comes over to America where that isn't the case, you know, and settles in Ohio or whatever. And here we are. But, and that, his choice then affects us now. So we're historical beings, and therefore history does really matter. Mm-hmm. And that's why we want to tell some of those stories.
Yeah. Well, I've never been much into history, and I think it was good for me to experience that and learn about it, because like I said, I've never really been into it. I was just like, I don't have a framework for it. Like, kind of what's the point? Like, I get it. Like, I know it's important, just like I know reading is important, but it's like, you know, do you actually do it? Going over there and hearing, I don't know. It's just like, you see a window into a totally different world. And yet there are similarities, like you said, and it's just wild. The things that they go through to uphold what they believe. And it really, really shocked me about like, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? And what are you willing to do because of it? And so I think, I don't know. I found it really engaging and challenging personally for my own beliefs, and also seeing where they came from, which is cool, because it's like we're both Anabaptists, and so like this is a huge part of our our history, and our life is kind of centered around that. And it's kind of wild that I went through most of my life not knowing where that came from.
Yeah, and so like, why? Like,
I've.
I mean, we have ancestors who are probably, you know, burned alive or whatever, because they wouldn't baptize their infant daughter or son. I'm like, they burn people alive for that's insane, you know. But like, that was real. That was real, and like, you don't want to forget stuff like that, you know. That it shows, you know, humans can do some really terrible things to each other because they disagree on what we would now look at as like, it's kind of trivial. Like, why would the government care? Can you imagine our government, Congress sitting down and writing a law that says, if you don't baptize all your babies by the 8th day, we will like exile you or whatever. That would be insane. Like we can't imagine a world like that. And back then that would have been like, well, of course they'll do that. Like why, what else does Parliament have to do? Like they're here to enforce religious laws, and it's just so alien to us today. And it's like, we shouldn't forget that because like, that's an important part of the human experience. And like you were saying, they did really believe this stuff. I think they were very sincere. And if you can imagine, there's this whole thing, the cosmology of the Middle Ages is fascinating. So C.S. Lewis is, he's known for a lot of Christian apologetics and novels and things like that. But as a scholar in his academic career at Cambridge, he was a very good scholar of Middle Ages, like literature and cosmology, essentially. And so he wrote a textbook that's still in use today, by the way, which is crazy, called The Discarded Image. And it's all about the cosmology of the Middle Ages, which sounds really boring. And I read it and it was fascinating. It's basically saying they really believed the universe had a certain structure because they were so serious about the religion, and it physically built this how the universe was structured at its core. And so that's how serious they took this stuff. It wasn't just, oh yeah, I go to church on Sunday or whatever. Like it formed their whole perception of reality at every level. How they looked at the stars all the way down to how they looked at atoms and everything in between.
Wild.
Yeah. And so for them, the spiritual world and the physical world were like this. They were like fused together essentially. And it was frequent that the spiritual world would pop through into the physical world.
Yeah.
And so if you believed that, if you believed demons would frequently pop into your world or angels or what have you, and then you have someone come along teaching what you think is heresy, it's like, the demons are getting the upper hand here. Not in I'm not saying that in a, like, this wasn't in a symbolic way. They would be like, literally, this is happening. This is horrible. The fabric of the universe is out of balance. Our society is going to fall apart if we don't deal with this. And that was why they took it that seriously, to the point, we'll just kill you. We will execute you because this is such a threat. This is so serious. And obviously we look at that now and be like, whoa,
it's so bizarre.
Chill out. But they really believed it to that level.
Yeah. I think that is the part that confused me so much while we were doing the actual documentary, is I would like keep hearing these things and I'm just like, man, it feels a little over the top.
Guys, like,
feels a little crazy maybe. And I mean, the Anabaptists were kind of crazy in a sense too. Like they did some pretty extreme things. Like what they did was incredibly extreme.
Yeah.
And they also kind of benefited from that polarized, like, we're gonna, this is truth and we're gonna go for it no matter what. So like, that's good.
Yeah.
Like we benefited from that, but it's just, it really surprises me what they went through for it. And that's like normal, like, oh yeah. We're gonna, for the Hutterites, it was, what was it? 80% of like missionaries 80. Never came back. It's like, and they were sending them out, what, every year?
I think it was every year or every 2 years they would do.
It was like a normal thing. Yeah, like we're going to collect a bunch of us and ship them out, knowing that most of them will not come back. This is totally normal,
And there's literally drawings that we found in the Zurich, Switzerland, in the Zurich archive that they pulled out for us, showing those same missionaries traveling, hundreds of miles to go do their thing, and the government, chasing them down with like the swords and whatever and hauling them off to prison. And I'm like, why did the government, care about those things? But they did, because they're like, if we let these guys say this stuff, it's going to disrupt society and tear this intricate order of how we believe the universe is going to be. It must be set up because of what we believe from a religious perspective. If we let these guys continue, the whole fabric of society will fall apart. And to an extent, they actually were kind of right. They were actually kind of right, because the things that these guys were saying was saying your view of the fabric of society is wrong, And so they're like, well, that's not cool, So the lawyers and the the policemen and the whoever are like, we gotta shut this down. This is a serious problem. And so all this is like, okay, whatever. You guys are talking about something 500 years ago. Who cares? It's still true today, though. Like if you have things hit you that don't fit with your view of how the world is, what is your response? It's typically like, that's wrong, that's not okay. Yeah. I'm either going to separate myself from that, or I'm going to do something to shut that down.
Right.
Cancel culture, whatever. They said something I don't like, shut it down. Right. And So yeah, they were really extreme 500 years ago, but like that human response is very much there, in all of us. And so I'm not sure what the lesson is there, but
because you have to stand on truth.
You got to stand on something.
You got to stand on it, and you don't want to be wishy-washy on that. But you also need to be wise enough to be able to hold something that's opposing and genuinely assess it without just disregarding it or being threatened by it. There's that famous quote. It's like a wise man knows how to hold two opposing opinions and not feel threatened by them, or a mature man, or something like that.
I think that's like an Aristotle quote or something.
Yeah. And I really like that because you just see the total opposite of that from them. And it's just like so extreme. And the other thing too is how many people were craving that. I think that separation, because I was just editing one of the episodes, and it's like, we know Bubba over here, like he would never die for anything. And like they go to his house and a week later he's dying for his faith, and it's like, what in the world? Like what's happening? Like, cause they thought it was like a magic potion or whatever being passed around. And it's like something is going on here. And obviously we believe it was happening because the Lord was working in it, and it was a spiritual revolution. It's like that obviously has a part to play in it, but also the fact that like people were so, I don't know, it just surprises me how many people were willing to jump on board with that. Despite the fact that they knew what was probably going to happen.
Yeah, belief is a crazy thing. There's some really interesting studies on this stuff, but the point being, when people feel threatened, their way of life feels threatened, they will go to Herculean efforts to restore what they see as the status quo.
Yeah.
And when you understand that, and this is one of the benefits of learning history, suddenly the present day world makes a lot more sense. You look at any of the major world wars or any of the conflicts throughout history, and you dig deep enough, you're like, someone felt threatened, their way of life felt threatened, and they went to extreme lengths to preserve what they believed was the right thing. Sometimes you could say they were right. Sometimes you could say clearly that was a really bad idea. Germany during World War II, obviously that was a really dumb, they got it wrong, but they felt threatened. They felt threatened by communist Russia. Right. And I mean, maybe they were threatened, and then, so it just went off the rails. It got unhinged because they were like, we're being threatened. We will do anything we need to do to preserve
that like frantic, like, that feeling is terrifying. When you see that look in someone's eye, it's like a wild animal being cornered.
They feel cornered. I was reading a biography of a artillery, what was he, artillery lieutenant or sergeant or something. He had a command of an artillery unit for Germany during World War II, and he was like, we thought we were defending, we felt like we were being attacked, so we thought that we were trying to just defend our way of life. It was basically what he said, and his point in the book was like, obviously we were wrong, but we were so deceived in that moment. And of course, when you're in it, you're only seeing such a small part of the picture, and then after the war is over, you're seeing, whoa, okay, wait a minute, there's all this stuff going on. It was awful. But my point being, humans can do really terrible things to each other when they feel threatened, and they can get unhinged. And we saw that in this documentary series. And when it comes out, people will watch that and they'll be like, wow, lessons to learn for us today, for sure. But you see it in present day, I mean, obviously politics is a great example where one side will win and the other side will feel threatened, and then they'll do something stupid, and then they'll flip the other way, and, they'll get all mad at each other and riot in the streets and blow stuff up and whatever. This happens all around the world all the time. And you're like, oh yeah, that's like human nature. That happens a lot.
Kind of ingrained in us.
And to be able to recognize that and say that's not the better part of our humanity. Like,
and we probably shouldn't lean into that.
Yeah, we shouldn't.
That like anytime there's polarization, I guess you could say there's something that people feel threatened by. Would you say that?
I think so. I mean, I'm sure psychologists and sociologists have studied this and could probably give confirmation one way or the other. But from what I can tell, yes. Okay. You could even take choose whatever controversial, polarizing thing you want, climate change or something. At the end of the day, someone on probably on both sides, somebody's feeling threatened. Whether it's a big corporation feeling like their profit margins are going to get cut because of EPA regulations, which is a thing, or the person on the other side who feels threatened that the planet is going to get in worse condition, and so their kids won't have as good a life as they did. Both sides are saying, like, I don't like what I'm feeling and seeing, so we need to like go on high alert and attack each other. And then, you get some pretty crazy stuff people do over that. And it's like, whoa, guys. And
they both want the same thing, usually.
The good. Usually.
Usually they want the good of like what they think is right.
Yeah, probably.
And you just see that play out in such different ways.
And it's like, here we are like sometimes literally beating each other up in the streets over like atmospheric science data. That's really weird. Like, what? You're like, humans are really weird bunch.
So basically, right? we've dumbed it down to fighting in the streets and not burning people at the stake. All right, well, progress,
but like, still kind of makes you scratch your head. And I guess what I'm trying to say here is like, wow, we need to be more. I know, at least for myself, doing a trip like that, trying to be more cognizant of my own biases and the way I respond to people I disagree with doesn't mean I'm just wishy-washy and don't believe any. No, of course. I still absolutely, there's things I believe, right? But how I respond to them, that's the thing. I can always control that. I can always control how I respond to stuff. And I think that is ultimately the lesson. I mean, this is really neat, actually, in the last 20 years, 10 years. The church and the government in Switzerland have issued statements formally saying, we are so sorry that we handled that the way we did, for this new movement that started and how we were so brutal towards them. That was not right. That was wrong. And that's cool.
That shows a lot.
I appreciate, I can appreciate saying, like they really they stake their claim on that as, the government of Switzerland. This was the right thing to do. And for them to be like, ooh, we really messed up. Yeah. So
the other moral of the story too is keep a better perspective.
Yeah.
Like when you get so zoomed in on something, you forget and you lose track of the other things that are also important, and so that I like that trip because we were constantly zooming in and zooming out, and so it gave a really good perspective of like you zoom way in and you're like, oh, like I can kind of understand that, and then you zoom way out and like, whoa, that's kind of crazy in context of everything. And so in our own lives, I think that's important too, to stop, take a second, breathe, Whew, okay, back up.
Everybody calm down.
Zoom out a little bit. Nobody freak out. Let's just, what are we trying to accomplish here versus who's right, who's wrong? See, I think that's kind of a problem that we fall into. When we start throwing around who's right, who's wrong, it doesn't always end well because it becomes like you're butting heads.
Yeah.
And I think if we did better at, instead of saying I'm right, you're wrong, we came at it more as like a let's solve this problem together kind of thing, it would help. And perspective definitely helps with that. Because poor perspective, that's hard to say. Poor perspective is you're going to take the narrow, easy route, which is I'm right, you're wrong. Yeah. And so broadening that out, realizing, okay, maybe this isn't a right or wrong. Maybe this is a better or worse situation. And how do we find the best way forward versus me leaving as the winner?
Finding that way forward, I think, is the important piece, because if your perspective is very narrow, your natural instinct is going to be rage, lash out, or
win
to
at all
say,
costs.
Like let's say there's a disagreement, it'd be the natural human tendency is to say, okay, therefore you are the problem, instead of saying actually the problem is we disagree on something fundamental. But instead, we tend to individualize it and say this person is the issue. Okay, I'm sure there are cases where that's, but it's very easy to vilify an individual instead of saying we're disagreeing over this concept.
Yeah,
those are pretty different things. It's very easy to get mad at a person, and want to attack them or something. Which again, riots in the streets, which we have seen a lot of in the last 5 years in this, here in America. Versus saying we disagree at a fundamental level on a concept. And that's important. And that's a real disagreement that has got to be worked out. Yeah. But that is a little different than saying I'm going to take a baseball bat to you, and knock out your kneecaps, right? Which has happened, unfortunately. And so, what are we saying? Well, I think being more gracious with how we treat each other, while not being a rollover and just being like, oh, okay, I don't believe in anything. That's absolutely not what we're saying here. But, humans do tend to do this to each other. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah. It's not helpful.
No.
Well, we kind of experienced that on the trip just a little bit in a very small way when there was differences about how we should do something, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or so take, for example, during the first week, we were really finding our footing and there was a lot of clarity that we were like, that we didn't have because we hadn't done this before. This was our first time making a documentary. It's like, there's a lot to do. And, you know, we couldn't define all of our roles perfectly before we got there. And so there was just some ambiguity, and working through that, you know, I got very frustrated at first because I wasn't given really responsibility, and I thought this person was supposed to be doing this and that person was supposed to be doing this, and they thought I was supposed to be doing this. And it was like, it got frustrated. And at the end of the day, I was like, guys, like we can't keep doing this. Like, you have to communicate with me. You got to be like, this trip's going to be horrible if we don't figure this out.
Yeah.
And so there again, like I was probably way too zoomed in on my problems and what I thought people should do, because obviously I'm right and everyone's wrong. And instead I should have, like, what I learned from that trip is when there's a problem, pause and like first at least acknowledge that those people are doing the best that they can to try to solve the problem and complete the mission. And they're not the problem. The problem is we're not working well together.
We're missing something.
And so, like I said, day 2, I was like losing it. It's going to be horrible. The next 3 weeks are going to be awful. And by the end of the week, I could look back on that and be like, man, I don't respond like that anymore, especially in a group. And that was really cool to see. And so it's a smaller version of kind of what we're describing. But basically what I'm saying is this breaks all the way down. Yeah. It's not just these big political things. It's not just, you know, religion and violence and like all of these things. It boils down to our personal interactions, almost every kind of conflict that we approach in a way. And so if you can do this in small areas, it's going to help you do it in bigger areas.
Yeah.
So that was something I learned on the trip that was hugely influential for me. Like, man, it was so good. Because I'd never been on a team of that size.
Yeah.
And I definitely hadn't been a DP before. And yeah, that it really taught me a lot in that whole regard, which is awesome.
We should do a whole series on leadership and teamwork and how those work with different communication styles.
Yeah.
I teach a number of classes on this for different trainings and things. And so you have things like indirect versus direct communication, you know, chain of command, communication flows within a team, how many people a leader can effectively lead without getting subordinates to delegate leadership to. You know, there's a lot of practical stuff like that that we saw play out in a trip in this kind of trip because of the tight schedule. It, you know, whenever, especially when the higher the stress, the more you start seeing this stuff, right? And so, and it was, I wouldn't say like super high stress, but we had a very tight schedule, you know, so you don't have room for a lot of mess ups or miscommunications,
right?
At least ideally you don't. I think that could be a whole thing.
Oh, that'd be fun. Like, because now I actually kind of understand it. Before, I wouldn't have really got it. And you were able to like teach me some of those things, and I was able to apply them. Boom, like right away. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
We need to go through the Extreme Ownership book, which is an excellent leadership book that I actually use for one of my classes. I have all these PowerPoints and stuff on like. Here are tactics to use in a leadership situation or in teamwork situations to like come back to. It's so easy to say, well, my way is right and everybody else is wrong, and I'm going to take it out on people. You know, some of these things we've been talking about this whole episode, and instead choosing the better path. The higher road, even though that road is harder. That road is a lot harder.
Yeah,
you know, it's way easier to be like, you're wrong and I'm going to take it out on you instead of saying, we're going to work through this. We're going to figure this out.
Yeah. So that's actually that's another thing I learned on this trip is like week 1, I was aiming like right about flat. You know, I wasn't aiming down. I wasn't like actively trying to hurt people or like annoy people or get on people, but I also wasn't going up. I wasn't like doing the best I could have been doing. And so I was doing the minimum possible effort to get by. And then I was blaming everybody else. So about halfway through the trip, I started realizing and kind of remembering what Jordan Peterson talks about aiming up in just like little areas, just consistently aim higher than just the default average bare minimum. And so I was like thinking about that. And then contradicts like everything I've said about YouTube Shorts, because I've said for a long time Shorts will never change your life, like Reels and stuff. Well, that was wrong, because I watched this short and I didn't even watch it. I just read the captions as it autoplayed. It was from Alex Hormoni, and he said, if you can have a bad day for no reason, then you can choose to have a good day for no reason. And he's like, basically saying the same thing. Aim up, like take that step. Don't just do the bare minimum. Yeah. And so those two things like mushed together, and I was like, this is so interesting and incredible. And so I started doing that, and it just like flipped a switch in my brain, because all of a sudden I started aiming up in the work and taking responsibility and not complaining, but instead like addressing the problem and helping solve the problem, or trying. But then also I realized, like, kind of like what Alex Hormoni said, is like, I'm just going through my day. I'm not having a bad day. I'm not having a bad attitude, but I'm also not having like a good attitude. I'm not like doing, like, I'm not energized. I'm not, going above and beyond. And I could, like, it's perfectly within my control. And so even that was just another way of showing me, that I automatically default to the bare minimum. And that's not good.
It's a very human thing.
It is. It is. That was a huge thing that I learned. It really showed me the importance of that, because it really affected the team dynamics then as we kept going.
Yeah, because you're not an island on a team. Everything you do affects your team. Yeah, everything. Yeah. There's I'm reading the book Beyond Band of Brothers by Major Dick Winters. So the infamous Band of Brothers, the 101st Airborne, the most celebrated, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment of World War II, the most elite unit in the U.S. Army at the time. And he wrote a book about it because it was like a popular television series. And he talks about that very thing. Because like, how do you become the best? And they trained for like... He himself trained for like 2.5 years, I think, before they ever did one mission. And at one point they were given an assignment to go do some kind of training, or to go to, I forget, it was some role he had to fulfill at one of the bases. And he was like, I'm just going to kind of just do the bare minimum. It's not that hard of a thing and whatever. And his, one of the other guys, his senior officer, was like, you never do that. We are the best, and you will show up every day and you will do your best. Wow. And he said that one piece of advice, it was early on in his career in the Army, totally changed the game for him. He's like, I'm going to do that. I'm going to just show up, do the best I can every day, no matter what, even if it's dumb. Because some of the training stuff they did was really dumb. It was the first parachute regiment the Army ever had, and so they didn't really know some of the stuff. They didn't quite know what they were doing. Like, they'd never done this before. And so he just showed up, I'm going to do the best. And as a result, he became a major.
Wow.
He ended up commanding the Band of Brothers, not just being one of them. And there's a lesson there, which, interestingly enough, he has Mennonite. He came from Mennonite background. Yeah,
did not know that.
He's in Ephrata, Pennsylvania, like right down the road from like where my friends live and stuff. Yeah, he's like very familiar with it. He writes about it quite a lot. Like, he never drank his whole life and like never swore and all this stuff because of that religious background. Obviously, he left it, and wasn't a Christian then during the war and stuff. But but he said he actually credits a lot of that work ethic to that worldview of you'll do your best, because you're here to do the best you can and to please God with how you live your life. And he's like, he never forgot that, even though he was in the military and stuff. So anyway, it's a really interesting story. Maybe we'll dive into that a bit more. But he has some really good stuff on leadership. Like, how did he go from just another guy in the unit to running the unit by the end of the war? What did he do? Yeah. And there's a lot of principles. And you show up every day. You do your best. Yeah. Even if it's dumb. Even if you're given an assignment at your job that's just like this kind of dumb. You just do the best you can. Anyway. Wow. Unless you have Apple Intelligence, like the commercial I just watched, where you don't have to do that and you can push a button and it'll rewrite everything for you. Because AI is so good. Because AI is so good. And then you can do your worst and it'll look like your best. Wow. So that seems like a great way the world is going. I love how humans just continually find new ways to flabbergast me. To be lazy. And to not try. Don't do shortcuts, people. Don't do shortcuts. Now, anyway, well, we should probably wrap this up. Yeah. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah, we should let people know that this is going to be a 10-part series. Yeah. The documentary. The documentary. 10-part documentary series. It'll be totally free.
So you can find it on YouTube's. On the YouTubes, you can look up Anabaptist Origins or Anabaptist Perspectives and probably find it through the channel there. And so you can watch those when they come out. It might be a little bit because I'm a slow editor sometimes. And there's a lot to go through. There's a lot of footage. A lot of footage. So anyway, keep an eye out for that. And I think that'll pretty much do it for this episode.
Yep. And you can find us on the interwebs.
Yep.
At our handles, austintrock.com or at austintrock, and myself, reagantrock.com, or just at reagantrock on all your favorite places, especially Substack. Our email newsletters.
We've got a pretty cool Substack. Yeah, I need to start writing more because I've been releasing a product, and so I haven't really been writing.
That's right. Which we did a podcast on that. So
yeah.
Anyways,
all right, cool.
Well, good stuff, guys. Well, we will catch you in the next episode.
Yep.